Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Think Welding and More. Today I'm going to be working on my Nissan Titan Prerunner. I'm going to add a triple bypass, so I need to rework the suspension. I'm going to cut out the shock tower and build a shock hoop with a strut bar. So let's quit messing around and dive in. Alright, so I'm going to show you the suspension. When I had purchased the truck, it already had it on there. There's a few things that I want to address when I do this to make it a little bit better. So let's check it out. So right here, I got the shock tower or coil bucket, whatever you want to call it. And you can see the bolt is bent from it being so long, and they left the existing mounts for the upper control arm, so I'm gonna cut all of that off and make new mounts and a shock hoop with enough tabs to have a triple bypass with the coilover. And there's a chance that I may need to rework the steering shaft that goes to the rack and pinion, because it's rather large, and so I have a smaller U-joint that I can make a new one with to have clearance for both of the shocks. The other issue is the lower control arm. As you can see, they have the uniball sideways, and it grinds on the side of the bolt, which is not safe. And even the tabs that hold it on to the uniball are very thin. So I'm gonna cut all of this out and rework it. I'm gonna put the uniball back on the lower control arm and put tabs on the upright. So let's get started. Alright, so I'm over on the passenger side. I had already removed the coilover. I'll show you what I did and what I'm going to do for the shock tower and how I figure out all my measurements. So this is the shock tower in the upper control arm. The previous owner had a shop build this shock tower, and the distance between was too long, so the bolt bent. So it took me a while to cut it and knock it out so I could remove the coilover. Now since it's out, what I'm gonna do is cut from here all the way to here off, leaving one tab so I have the location of the control arm. Once I have that cleaned up, then I'll put the tab over here to hold this side of the control arm, and that will, then I'll be able to cut this side so it's still in the same position. It's kind of a easy way to do it instead of me having to remeasure everything over and over again. All right, now that we have the suspension out, I'm gonna work on cutting out the old tower, cleaning it up, and then getting it ready to fit up the new shocks. I think before we actually fit up the new shocks, I gotta rework the upright and lower control arm. So let's get started on that. Alright, so I went ahead and cleaned up the frame and tacked my mounting supports for the upper control arm. I'll go ahead and show you that now, and after that I'm gonna start on the lower control arm, kind of cutting it apart, reworking it to get it ready for the triple bypass. So let's check it out. So as you can see right here, I have the upper control arm tacked up and mounted in. I put some new heim joints on it so it's really stiff, but I had cleaned up the frame, cut off the stock mounts and welded in these new boxes. Once I know they're exactly where I need them, I'm going to weld it out and then do some triangle gusseting to make it a little bit stronger. That's it for that. Now let's move on to the lower control arm. Alright, so right here I have my upright or spindle and lower control arm. Typically, you know, to add another shock you would just cut off the single mount and put two mounts. But in this case I have problems with the the lower control arm and the upright. The previous owner, obviously he thought there wasn't clearance, but as you can see here, there's plenty of clearance for the uniball cup, but he decided to chop the edges of the cup off, which ruins it. So I'm definitely going to cut that out and replace it with a new one so it's safe again. The problem is the bolt, when the upright, you know, it turns left to right, it hits the head and the nut of the bolt, which just grinds them away, which also makes it unsafe. So even this setup, if I was to put a new cup on it, put a new bolt in it, it's gonna hit on this 1-inch thick plate and it's just grinding a hole on either side and making, you know, just problems. So to fix this, I am going to cut out this uniball, and instead of welding a new one in, I'm going to put plates in there that are bigger, beefier than these little ones that are on the control arm. And then I'm gonna take this cup and cut away the control arm and weld the cup to it. That way it eliminates the problem of the bolt, you know, coming in contact with the upright, in theory. So I'll try it out, tack it up, and cycle it and see if it works. So let's get to it. As you can see, I cut out the uniball, I cleaned it all up to get it ready to tack up the two tabs, and we'll move on to the lower control arm modifications. Alright, so I got the tabs tacked on the upright spindle and the uniball in place. I can see that it clears, there's no interference, and the tabs are a lot bigger, and I will gusset it, so this is going to be very strong. As far as the control arm, I'm going to cut it in a way that it will clear everything and there will be no interference, and I will tack the uniball to it, put it back on the truck, cycle it, make sure everything is working well, and then I'll pull it back off and weld it up. So let's get to it. Alright, so here it is. I finished reworking my lower control arm and upright. Today I'm going to end the episode. I'm going to do a second part that's going to have the shock hoop fitting up the coil and the triple bypass and finishing it up. So if you guys like what you see, give a thumbs up. Please subscribe to help me out. I'll see you guys on part 2. Later.